Now, I'm delighted to be joined by Kelvin MacKenzie, the former editor of The Sun newspaper, of course. Kelvin, thanks for joining us this morning. There's an extraordinary blame game going on at the moment. The Labour Party is blaming the Tories are blaming the Labour Party, and the unions, of course, are at loggerheads with the rail operating companies. Who's to blame here?
Well, I mean, it's quite understandable that people want a pay rise. I quite understand that. The question is, who is going to fund it? So we already have the most expensive rail tickets in Europe. So as a regular commuter, I don't want to fund it. Secondly, the government, thanks to putting up its taxes because of the 400 billion we erroneously spent on furlough and bounce back loans, right? We now have the dearest the highest taxes for, I don't know, something like 60 years. So the taxpayer doesn't want to fund it. So they have an issue. They are hitting two huge boulders. And so I agree with the general view that this is not going to be solved anytime soon. What I object to is the fact that I am, as a commuter, used as a battering ram to force these nationalized businesses to pay money that they don't possess. Where is that money going to come from? It's either going to come from the passenger who doesn't want to pay, or from the taxpayer who is already paying the highest tax rates for 6 decades. There is no simple solution. And having a load of people coming on from the trade union side talking about, oh, this is a battle for the working classes, we're the bulwark of the working classes, is not helpful. You need an intellect on it. Jobs have got to be lost. People just have to accept that. People are going to be fired. Well, what a surprise that is. People are fired every single day. Nobody gets on the front page of the papers. And so the unions have got to accept some pain. And the question is, does the taxpayer or the nationalised industry have the money to pay them? I suspect they don't. This is going to go on for a very, very long time.
Have we become infantilized in how we view politics now? We sort of had 2 years where the government spent an extraordinary sum of money thinking that sort of spending can solve every problem, that we don't have to take any pain at any time. It feels like now there are very few people who are willing to sort of stand up and say, well, actually, at some point, there are consequences for what has taken place. No one's fault, of course. No one expected a virus to come and sweep the world. But passenger numbers still today are about only 80% of passenger numbers before the pandemic. So not only have costs gone up to run these services, but the amount of money these services are generating have gone down. Surely restructuring becomes inevitable in this circumstances. How do we get to that stage?
Well, this is a very, very interesting point. So the left, who run the RMT and run most of the other unions as well, say, not on our watch. We're going to fight you tooth and nail. And the question that comes to it all is everybody says, I've got my hand out. I want you to put money in it. Where is that money coming from? As a country, we are not doing well. I don't necessarily blame Boris Johnson for this. I definitely blame COVID for it, but we are not doing well. But this hasn't stopped. Our friends in the trade union movement saying, well, actually, we don't care whether you're skin or not skin. We are not going to have to suffer. But they're not the only people that are going to have to suffer. The teachers are going to have to suffer. The doctors are going to have to suffer. All the state workers, and this is where we come to another change that I'd like to see in the law. We cannot have a situation where when we run into difficult economic times, then certain groups of employees simply say, we don't care, we are in a powerful position, we are going to either not treat you, not teach your children, or not run your railways, or as in the old days, not give you energy by digging coal out of the ground, we are going to hold you to ransom till you pay. We haven't got the money. So I think that Boris and co, I don't know whether Boris has got a backbone or not. I'm very, very surprised at some of his reactions these days. Simply got to turn out and say, I'm afraid the cupboard's bare, and we are all of us, going to have to take some pain. Yes, the very wealthy will not take the pain, right? But I'm afraid all the rest of us are going to have to receive it.
Is this politically feasible? The last time we saw a situation like this, we got into a really damaging wage price spiral where prices were going up, inflation was crazy. It reached over 20% in the mid-1970s. And that was pushed not only by policy that was loose on the monetary side of things, but also you had this situation where strong unions were demanding higher wages, and that pushed up prices, and then the prices demanded higher wages, and the wages went up, and you got this self-destructive spiral that helped absolutely no one. It took incredibly tough action to stop that spiral, and actually that spiral hurts the poorest the most. Are we at risk of entering a similar spiral this summer with other unions looking to follow the RMT now too?
Right. Well, of course, I am, as you might be surprised to learn, Tom, old enough to remember the 70s. It was beyond shocking. And what happened? Well, in 1979, after Callaghan had said, crisis, what crisis, right? And this is where people weren't being buried and there was rubbish on the streets and everything. We ended up with Margaret Thatcher, and we ended up with a boom period, and we ended in a complete matter of change. Yes, it was divisive, but when people went to the country, they all voted, we want Thatcher. People are prepared to take the pain if they can see what the end game is. And the question we're now coming to now is the RMT, is the National Education Union, is a mixture of the BMA and the nurses and the this and the BT engineers and God knows who else? Is this a massive crunch? And if I were the Tories, I would say, we haven't got the money. We cannot pay you. We're so sorry. We can give you 3%. We might even give you 4%. And I tell you what, if you were the RMT and you changed some of your disgraceful practices, we might even give you 4.5%. But if you want 11%, I'm afraid that is not possible. Until we decide that we are strong enough to do this, I'm afraid this is likely to go on for many, many months and will be more damaging as Labour actually have worked out. It's going to be, the length of it will be more damaging for the Conservative, because people in the end will say, I don't really care how much it is, I'm just going to write a cheque. Well, they would be mad, but that is what happens. People have become very, very weak.
And it's interesting mentioning Margaret Thatcher there, because she used to say, yes, the medicine is harsh, but the patient requires it. And that was almost followed up in a funny sort of way by the Cameron era in government, where they said the words long-term economic plan implied that there needed to be some pain now for gain later. Is this government anywhere close to that level of thinking? It seems like this government sort of wants to chase popularity, can't stand unpopularity in the short term, even if it makes things better in the long term.
Yeah, so Boris turned out to be a surprise in the sense that he would rather write the cheque and send you away happy than rather be negative. I mean, Blair said the toughest word in politics is no. And that is true in business, and it is true in life, and it's even true with your family. Boris doesn't understand this, because as far as Boris is concerned, there is no word. It doesn't matter how many wives there are, how many children there are, how many MPs there are. The answer is yes. How can I make you happy? How can I send you away with a smile? There is no way that there can be a happy ending to the RMT dispute and its tentacles as it goes out into nursing, doctoring, teaching, whatever.
Well, we've got to find some backbone within our politicians. We'll see if that takes place over this summer. Somehow, I doubt it from any side of the fence. But for now, Kelvin MacKenzie, thanks so much for talking through this enormous issue that will no doubt run and run.